Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. On va commencer la réunion dans une minute. We'll start the meeting in 1 minute. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bon matin, mesdames et messieurs. Welcome to the Finance and Economic Development Committee. Excuse me, special meeting for the 29th of April, 2022, le 29 avril 2022. Do we have quorum, Madam Coordinator?
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so a few reminders for today's meetings, which is being held using Zoom. Members of the committee and staff are asked to stay on mute at all times unless called upon to speak. Members of council, if you wish to speak to an item, please use the raise hand feature. This meeting will be live streamed on YouTube. Members and staff are asked to position their cameras so their faces are centered and as close to the top of the frame as possible. And phone-in participants, please do not put the phone on hold. So before we proceed, I'll do a quick roll call of members. Councillor Cloutier.
Présent, Monsieur le Maire.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Here, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Tierney. Councillor Tierney. Councillor Dudas, Vice Chair Dudas.
Easy.
A declaration of interest, déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. In-camera items, light rail transit, legal update in-camera, reporting out date, not to be reported out. We'll begin by resolving in-camera regarding light rail transit and the legal update. I'll ask Vice Chair Dudas to read the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved that the FEDCO resolve in camera to receive and consider light rail transit LRT legal update pursuant to the procedure bylaw subsections 13(1)(e), litigation or potential litigation affecting the city, and 13(1)(f), the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, reporting out date not to be reported out.
Okay, on the motion, Carrie, update.
Yeah.
So we'll take 5 minutes to allow members to leave the Zoom meeting and join the MS Teams meeting, as well as to allow clerk staff to stop the Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Hello, could we just confirm that you could hear us, please?
We
I can hear you fine.
Thank you very much. Merci.
For the benefit of those joining us online, the Finance and Economic Development Committee just met in camera in order to receive a presentation on the LRT legal update. These matters will not be reported out as they relate to subsections 13(1)(e) of the procedure bylaw, litigation or potential litigation affecting the city, and 13(1)(f), the receiving of devices subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. During the in-camera session, no votes were taken other than procedural motions and/or directions to staff. Item 2 on our agenda is quarterly stage 2 LRT construction update. Mr. Kanellakos, do you have any opening comments? And then we're handing it over to Mr. Morgan, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. No, I'll just hand it over to Mr. Morgan. He has a presentation that he'll walk you through, and then we'd be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll just put up the presentation for the group. There we go. So we have, just go to the first next slide there. I'm going to provide a quick overview of the project end to end, just to give you kind of a sense of where we are. In 2019, was the award for the contracts. 3 years later, we're at a point now where the designs on both projects are complete. We're going to be, by the end of the year, starting be in active construction on all stations, on all extensions. O-Train East, we saw that media event the other day, making very good progress on the track installation there. And obviously the south extension, a lot of track work going on there. A lot of the track work you actually can't see because it's kind of tucked away in part of a wooded area behind between Hunt Club and Lycham Road. The other big thing that we're going to see this year is there's about 10 connectivity bridges in various locations, some part of transit stations, some not. But over the coming summer, you're going to see a number of those go into place and start to come together. So that's going to be really exciting for the city. And then just as a general comment, there's about 2,000 local jobs across all of those extensions that are helping to build the system. So we're very excited about the progress that's being made. And everywhere you go, you see progress on the project. So with that, we're going to start you in the east. I'll talk you through a couple of quick slides here. So the first one is just a view of the new bridge. So this is the rail bridge that actually takes the trains as they leave from Blair into the center of the highway. So we're making very good progress on this bridge. In the distance, in the background, you see the old transitway bridge. That's actually going to be torn down this in the upcoming months, so the month of May. So watch for the traffic impacts when we close the lanes to take that structure down. But that essentially allows us to provide the connection all the way through to Blair. Then if you look at this structure, just on the right-hand side of it, you see there's kind of the structure where the train's going to come off of the roadway, but there is actually a multi-use pathway that's going alongside that as well. So that multi-use pathway is going to connect all the way through to Montreal Road and then through to Greens Creek pedestrian bridge. So I'll show you that in a second here. So the next slide shows you a bit of an overview of some of the work that's happening. So this is basically the final connection between that structure and Blair Station. And so later this year, we're going to be actually extending the tracks at Blair Station and connecting through basically all the way through to Jeanne d'Arc. We'll be able to make the connections ahead of next year, 2023, starting to see some actual, probably some preliminary train movements on that track. So it's very exciting. We're making good progress. It's starting to look like a railroad. So you go to the next slide, we'll just give you a shot of Montreal Station and the work that's progressing there. So you still see, just as you drive by now at that station, you can start to see the structural steel for the elevator banks is kind of coming out of the station. So all the entrances to Montreal Road are from underneath the station. So that's kind of good progress at this location. If you go to the next slide, here, I mentioned it briefly. So the two abutments for a new pedestrian bridge. So again, this is connecting a new pathway that's running along the 174 all the way back to Blair Station, and then further to the east of here, it connects to the pathways, so Georges Etienne Parkway pathways and the rest of it. So adding a lot of connectivity through this area. So this structure, the structural steel for this new pedestrian bridge should go in later this year. If you go to the next slide, you see Jeanne d'Arc Station. You see the station entrances are going to be on both sides of the road. This road network is actually going to be reworked to make it more friendly for access, people coming on bikes and various modes of transportation to actually get to the station. If you go to the next slide, you kind of get a sense of how much has been built up. So this is kind of the one side of the station where you'd actually get to the platform of the station. You'd be able to go from here down to the at-grade level where the trains are going to be running. You see the highway's still kind of in a reconfigured state right now where we've created a little bit of extra space for station construction, but eventually it'll be tightened up and some of the lane will be given back to provide more shoulder on the highway. So very good progress on the station. It's going to, over the coming months, especially now that the weather's broken, it's going to come out of the ground very quickly. You go to the next one. So a little bit further down. So this is a station we started a little bit later on the station in terms of the various stations in the east, but this one's starting to come out of the ground as well. And again, we're going to be making some road configurations up top to make it as friendly as possible to get to this station. Go to the next slide. Place d'Orleans. So this one in the foreground, you actually see a series, a bit of a structure there with a roof. So that's a series of maintenance buildings. So that's going to be holding the comms room, all the rooms for the CBDC equipment. That's all kind of the back of house equipment. Really, the majority of the station is in between the existing overpass and Champlain Road. And then you can actually see a little bit on the right-hand side, you see a bit of an orange marker there. There's actually a second pedestrian bridge that's taking you to the the station in the middle of the highway just to provide additional capacity. So based on our forecasts, you needed that extra capacity to get from the bus loop to the station. Go to the next slide. So we've already seen a little bit, so the rail construction. So this is, this picture is in very good shape. You know, obviously we have to come back in here and fill in with the ballast between the ties and set the level. You see the fence going up on the right-hand side. The fence needs to go up on the left-hand side. And then you see actually a series, if you're driving by, you can see a series of these kind of circular black objects in the middle. And those are the foundations for the overhead catenary poles. And so very quickly here, they'll be in a position where they'll be able to start coming behind the track crew and start installing those poles and putting up the catenary systems, which will be, it'll really start to look like a railroad at that point. If you go to the next one, you see some of the work that they're doing on the left-hand side. So they're actually setting track at Montreal Station. So this is this is the kind of the jig setup they're doing to get the track set perfectly in relation to the platform, and you see the elevator banks there coming out of the stations on the left. And then on the right-hand side, you see this this special piece of machinery that they've engaged. Is actually what they do is they offload the ties directly from the trailer truck onto the ground into their final location. So this is a very efficient way of setting those ties into place and avoids a lot of double handling of those ties, which is, from a quality perspective, is a very good approach. And from just a project efficiency perspective, the trucks pull over on the highway just beside that structure. They pull the ties right off and set them into place. So it's a very efficient operation, and they're making very good progress in this area. At the end of the line, the Trim Road Station. So we spent a lot of time last year realigning the Trim Road intersection. So a lot of good work to be done there. There's still more work to be done at that on the road itself. There's some overhead sign structures and different things to be done. But here you see the station kind of coming out of the ground. There's going to be the new pedestrian walkway that takes you to the bus loop and takes you to the fare paid zone. And then in the background, we are working on the future proofing a pedestrian overpass that would go kind of side to side through this area to get you across from one side of the highway to the other. So a lot of work being done in this area and very good progress. We're very happy with what we're seeing here. So just in terms of the upcoming work, so you'll start to see the stations come out of the ground a little bit more and more track installation will happen all along the alignment. You'll start to see some of the rail systems. Specifically, you'll start to see the catenary poles go in, and you'll start to see some stringing of the overhead wires. And so that's more end of the year and into next year, but you'll start to see it really come together. And then Greens Creek Pedestrian Bridge, you'll see the structural steel go in as we prep that bridge. It'll be a while before we have the connecting pathways to get to it, but that you'll see it come out of the ground and it'll look very good. And then obviously in May, we've got this big event over the weekend where we're going to demolish the old Blair Transitway Bridge over the 174. In terms of highway impacts, so last year, again, have to thank the residents who live in this area, series of super weekends that we had to do to get all the extensions, modifications done to the interchanges. Now it's basically into this one last big bang with in May to get that Blair Transitway Bridge down, but otherwise there'll be a series of closures and different things, but nothing to the extent that we saw in 2021. So that was the East, and as described publicly, the East is still tracking to the original timeline, so we're very happy with the progress that's being made there. We'll talk a little bit about the West now. So if you go to the first one, so this is the temporary Roosevelt Bridge that's been installed in place. It was pushed into place last year, and they're just finishing up the paving and the approaches, and they've put up some temporary sound barriers at this location. This is a busy location because we actually need to flip the traffic up onto Scott Street. The transitway buses will go across this new bridge, and then Dominion Station will basically be right in the center of this image. So there's some rock excavation, other things that need to be done to drop in Dominion Station right at this location. So a busy spot, a big intersection, and obviously moving the buses up onto Scott is going to be a big deal. Go to the next few slides, just give you a kind of a bird's eye view of the progress that's being made on excavating the tunnel. So good progress here through the initial part of this SGM cut and cover tunnel. So this is a 3-kilometer tunnel. Starts in the SGM here, pretty straight section. If you go to the next one, get a little bit further down. So it continues a very straight line. and then it cuts back in to get onto Richmond Road and get into Byron Linear Park. And so right where at that intersection of Richmond Road, I think there's a photo, the next photo should show it. You see this, so this is the location, you see the crux of the challenge here. So there was actually a very large water main just kind of in the background of this photo. We're trying to get through this intersection. Obviously traffic lights and traffic, big impacts here. And then we're also threading the needle between a new building and an existing building. So trying to be very cognizant of our neighbors in this area, get through the area. But once this is covered up, it'll be in great shape in terms of being a tunnel and connecting into Sherburne Station, which is just around the corner. So if you go to the next slide, you see some of the work that's really coming together. You see basically the bottom of the tunnel there being finished. They're starting on the walls. Obviously the top struts are there to kind of keep it in place, make sure nothing happens. This is actually should be just the tail end of the curve and the tail end of Sherburne Station right here. If you go to the next slide, you see the excavation continuing. They're kind of working in piecemeal fashion all the way through. As they finish one section, they get in right away. They do the walls. They do essentially the floor of the tunnel, and then they're going to be coming back later this year to start covering up parts of the tunnel too. So that will help with some of the road works. You see some intersections as you go through that the roads are still open and active, and we need to cut through there and actually build the tunnel through those sections. So here's a bit of a close-up of one of those road intersections. And so they've done as much as possible in terms of staging and logistics to keep it open, but at some point they're going to have to close it just to finish off that short span, that short tunnel section through that area. So Byron Linear Park's looking very good. If you keep going to the next slide, New Orchard Station. So these are some tall walls. So this is a very big operation. I know it basically takes an entire day. I think it's 12 to 14 hours of time to actually pour these walls. There's a certain rate that the walls have to be poured, and so if you pour it too quickly, you can cause problems. And so they have to very carefully manage the rate at which they pour the concrete into these forms. There's different techniques for vibration and flow that they use to monitor to make sure that the quality of the wall surface comes out very well. And so typically for one of these pours, you'll see concrete delivery trucks showing up all day to be able to to finish off this wall and to make that form. So you go to the next slide. So we stay in Byron Linear Park, and then as soon as we cut out, we come basically very quickly to Lincoln Field Station. So Lincoln Field Station is looking very good. The escalators are in, the roof line is there. They're starting to do the waterproofing on the roof structure, making very good progress. We go to the next slide, a bit of a closer up view of what the station looks like. So you can kind of see it orange under the tarps there. The escalator frames have already been installed. You start to get a sense of what the station is going to look like in terms of the plazas. I did try to include the next slide shows a rendering of this same area just to kind of give you a sense of how it fits into the end state in terms of the approach on the one side, the bus loop on the other side, and then there's the Carling Avenue just in behind. So pretty integrated network, pretty integrated with the pathways throughout this area. So a lot of very good progress at Lincoln Field Station. It's advancing quite quickly. You go to the next slide, you see the impacts to Carling Avenue. So there's a bunch of things happening that you can't necessarily see. There's a gas main on the north side. There's a water main on the north side of Carling Avenue Bridge. We've obviously narrowed Carling Avenue at this location, and we're in the process of building the second half of the bridge to re-widen Carling Avenue to get the trains under Carling Avenue and onto into Connaught Park. So if you go to the next slide, you get a sense of where the trains are going. So they're tucked in on the left-hand side there. You see the original transitway in the center of the photo. The trains will actually be traveling on the left. The old Woodruff pedestrian bridge in the background there started to come down. The new bridge is in place already. You see it's got a bit of a longer structure because the light rail system is actually off to the left of this image rather than being in the center where the transitway is. Because of that, there is a longer structure, and we are working on the approaches and having to do some design modifications to the approaches due to some conflicts with Hydro 1 lines, but working through that and hope to be able to have a date for opening this bridge in the near future for you. A little bit further down, so this is the Lincoln Fields flyover. So this is really the split structure, this is where the trains, a set of trains will continue west onto Queensview, Pinecrest, and Moody, and then a set of trains will, one half of the set of trains will go down south through to Iris and Algonquin Station. So a bit of work at that location before the trains will be able to get through to Iris Station. So Iris Station area. So this is where we've done a realignment of Pinecrest Creek. We put in 2 separate bridges to get over Pinecrest Creek. Here's in the center of the photo is actually where the new Iris Road is going to be going. So we're putting in a bridge there. Road will go over the LRT. Trains will go under, and then just kind of where you see the black matting there is where the station footprint is going to be roughly in that area. So there'll be a series of paths and connections to the train station at this location. The next slide just shows a quick view of the bridge from the other side. Obviously, right now it doesn't have the clearance for the train, so we'll have to excavate out to get to that. But essentially, Iris Station will be in the foreground of this picture. If we go to the next slide, it shows Algonquin Station. So in the background there, you see kind of tucked away a small head house. So there'll be 2 primary entrances to this building. So there's the one little head house that already has the roof finished on it. And then in the foreground, the larger building. And then there's actually a pedestrian bridge that's going to go from this main structure over to Algonquin College and connect in to allow people to get directly across to the station without having to cross the road, or directly into the college without having to cross the road. So a lot of progress here. The soils and earth in this area was very bad, so they've made very good progress in terms of being able to make progress on this area. The next slide shows Queensview Station. So again, another location where we're going to put in a pedestrian bridge. So this one is going to go across and connect with Baxter Road, connect into the station. You kind of see a widened rectangle in this area, which is where the station is going to connect to. And then kind of top and bottom, you see the guideway coming together, the formwork being done for the actual tracks, where the tracks are going to be laid in the future. So good progress at Queensview. Pinecrest Interchange. So this is, a major confluence of utilities, road network, and then tunnel, or not tunnel, but train in a trench that's essentially tunneled under some of these off ramps. And so there's a temporary bus off ramp that was closed, that was built, but then we had to close due to some utility conflicts. So that's reopening, should be reopening on Monday. So buses will be back on that off ramp for a little bit, but it's still going to take us about the better part of another year to finish the trench and the tunnel in this section, just to reopen that Pinecrest off ramp to reopen it for traffic. So a lot of work in this area, a lot of kind of different moving pieces in this area to keep it moving forward. And then just on the other side is Pinecrest Station. So that's coming together nicely. You see some tall walls being formed there that will kind of support the station and support the plaza. And then on the left-hand side, there'll be a bit of a bus loop there to drop passengers off and get them to and from Pinecrest Station. Continuing further down the alignment. So we skipped over Moody Station because right now they're just starting on the foundations and the setup for it. So there's not a lot to look at there, but you do get a sense here of all the work that was done on the interchanges last year. So there's an on-ramp, the bridge over the LRT, and then on the far side in the background there, you see another bridge that we had to build. So a series of bridges to take you from Moody Station into the LMSF facility. So the light maintenance and storage facility. So in the first phase of this facility, if you go to the next slide, it's intended to be just a light maintenance facility where you would do, you'll have a car wash, you'll have all your facilities for cleaning, for inspections. You can get underneath the vehicle to do basically any light work. Any heavy maintenance work would need to be done at Belfast. So bogey removals and that type of thing. But this, in a future phase, when we go to Canada, we'll be able to expand this building to provide additional capabilities for maintenance at this location. So this first building that you see, that's the maintenance building. So this is the maintenance building. The next slide is an admin building, essentially for the operations staff will be based out of here, picking up the trains in the morning and returning in the evening. And then the next picture shows you a storage facility for the vehicles where they will be kept at the end of night. So when they're out of service, they'll be in this facility. So we'll have basically 2 facilities, one here at Moody and then another one at Belfast. So just to avoid some deadheading and extra costs of running vehicles back and forth, we'll be able to store vehicles out here. So just in terms of the road impacts and the major, I'll get to road impacts in a second. So station construction, all stations through this year, starting this year. So we should be able to get to the last couple of stations that haven't started. Specifically, West Borough and Kitchissippi should start once we've moved the buses up onto Scott Street. The excavation and the cut and cover will continue, and you'll start to see the first covers go on the cut and cover tunnel in some areas. And so that'll be the start of kind of backfilling over top, and that sets the table for future landscaping and other activity that we're doing up top with Byron Linear Park. And then so this summer, so the final transitway closures are planned. So there's obviously between Tunney's Pasture and Kitchissippi Station we need to close, but then there's also, we're moving some of the buses onto Woodruff as well once they reach that Iris intersection. So that's a big thing. And then the LMSF, which is right now tracking about 3 months ahead of schedule, will also be enclosed and finished up. So there's about 3 slides here on mobility impacts. So the first one I'll talk about is Scott Street. So there is a water service that we need to bring to Westboro Station as part of fulfilling NFPA requirements and servicing requirements. So that was going to require a closure on Scott Street. That's ahead of the full closure. So there's a couple of different things happening. First is that we need to finish off the widening in this area, finish off some of the pathways, get that water service into Westboro Station, and then we basically end with a full closure of that transitway section with buses put up onto Scott Street. So that's right now planned for the end of June to happen as part of the next service change. The other area on the next slide is through Richmond Road. So obviously a bunch of work happening as part of either delivering concrete to Byron Linear Park, delivering materials, reconfiguring the road. So there'll be a continued series of off-peak lane closures and reconfigurations and temporary changes. There is still a plan to push some traffic onto Ambleside as part of a westbound detour, and that really buys us some time in the schedule in terms of work on the tunnel through that area. As we get to that end of the alignment, it basically everything narrows together. It becomes a very tight area to work in to be able to finish that tunnel. And so we want to put that detour in place. We've tried to do some upgrades to the sidewalks and make it as accessible as possible and other things in that area just to minimize the impacts of that detour, but that will help us with the tunnel construction through this area. And then obviously Carling Avenue, which we showed the photos of, there's a bunch of work to build another bridge to be able to provide a couple more lanes of traffic through that area. So that should happen this year and then should be back in service next year in the final configuration. And the last one, so the Pinecrest Interchange, obviously there's a bunch of things happening there. The first one, the westbound bus off-ramp, that should be actually put back into service May 1st. And so that won't come off the list. We're still essentially now Pinecrest to Bayshore, the buses have been detoured onto the highway. And so that will be through to the end of the project. Pinecrest Interchange, still through next summer, we're going to see the closure of those ramps, but hoping to open it back up to general traffic by the end of next summer. And then starting in June, moving basically the buses that are on the transitway between Iris and Baseline need to move on to Woodruff. And so there'll be some reconfiguration of Woodruff and realignment to that Iris intersection happening next summer. So the other piece that's happening in parallel with the east and west extension of the Confederation line is the Alstom vehicles continuing their production. So 7 vehicles have been accepted, and they've been roped into the fleet of vehicles, and they are part of the regular rotation. There's an 8th vehicle that's kind of going through the final steps to acceptance. That'll be as well roped into the fleet of stage 1 vehicles. Obviously, there's all the changes that stemmed out of the stage 1 with the inductors, with the door software. All of those things are being captured in all these new vehicles that are coming through. We need roughly 12 to 16 additional vehicles to be able to open the east. So we're in good shape there in terms of timing. And then obviously we need the entire fleet in terms of opening for the west, but the entire fleet currently planned to be delivered by end of 2023. So fleet expansion is progressing well. Progressing to our needs, I'll say, on the Alstom fleet. Go to the next slide. So just before I talk about the south, just to just to let you know, on the west, they are, there has been some public discussions about the schedule. They are facing some challenges. They're still under review. On paper, they're telling us roughly 3 months delay, but we are reviewing that with them now. And they have alluded to some additional challenges with craft and material supplies. They have committed to coming back to us in July with some additional information. And so we hope to provide more detail at that time in terms of other impacts or a measure of the impacts. So if we now focus on O-Train South, and we'll go to the first slide, which shows Bayview Station. So Bayview Station is one, it's interesting because we're reworking it quite a bit to add a second platform to add redundancy for train operations. Just on the right-hand side, you see a bit of a new structure. So that's actually, there'll be a redundant elevator bank in that building, which will connect to a pedestrian bridge, which will take you to the new Trinity development. And so that pedestrian bridge is being funded by Trinity. And the structure and the reconfiguration of the platforms will provide a new entrance for people coming to the Trillium line at grade. So you go to the next photo, we show Corso Italia Station. Obviously, you see the plaza there, the steel framework for the plaza. So the next step for them to be able to finish this level is to finish off the staircases. So they need to do that work. Once they finish off the staircases, then they can continue working on the structural steel, and you'll see it come out of the ground more. You'll see actually the facility being built up. So they are making good progress. They had it tented all last winter to be able to continue work, and you see essentially at grade there, you see the 2 platforms have been poured, and they made good progress over the winter in this area. The next slide, I think, shows you a bit of different view. Yeah, so you see the 2, it's more clearly shown in this picture. You see the 2 platforms that have been poured double track through this area. In the foreground, you see the plaza, which still needs to be built up. And then in the distance, there'll be actually 2 sets of staircases, emergency exits only. This whole area is all, I think there's half a dozen development applications. On the right-hand side, you have the OCH development. And then on the left-hand side, you see there's a number of development applications in to put in buildings there as well. So it's going to be a very exciting area in the years to come. A little bit further down, so this is Dow's Lake Station. So if you are down at grade level there, you see that the structural steel for a redundant elevator bank is in place. And so that's coming together nicely. Where you see the orange tarps there, they're just starting to work on creating a bit of a retaining structure to be able to support that wall to build back up the pathway. There is a bit of a challenge with getting water services to this location, but which may potentially result in some closures, but we are working as best as possible to minimize those impacts and get this built. Carlton Station. So the last time I spoke about, we skipped over Carlton Station, went right to Rideau River Bridge. But in this picture, you see the tarp structure there. They're still working on that center section of the bridge, which is the oldest section. So they're still doing some rework there. On the south side of the bridge, where you see the orange tarps, that south pier required a lot of rework, and so they've actually had to spend a lot of time at that location, doing some remediation on the pier, and so that's caused some delays to reopening the pathway. And then you see just kind of at the water level on the right-hand side, just in line with that crane there, you see the two kind of concrete structures there, which are in place for the new pedestrian bridge. So you really get a sense of where that pedestrian bridge is going to be placed. Right now in one of Carlton's parking lots, they are in the process of assembling the structural steel for that bridge, and they're looking to set that bridge sometime this summer. I don't know when they'll open it, but this kind of gives you a bird's eye view of where that pedestrian bridge will be installed. So good progress in this area. Still a bit of rework and difficulty challenges on the one side where that pier is, but we're trying to work through that with the local councillors. Further down, Mooney's Bay Station's coming together nicely. So you see the platform is poured there. A lot of the conduits coming out to provide the connections for the various comms and fare gates and different things that need to be connected. So this one is kind of progressing nicely in the background as they make progress at the other locations. The next picture should show you a shot of the Elwood diamond grade separation. So obviously the via tracks underneath that structure, and we're working up top, working on the approaches primarily right now, and they will start in earnest in a couple weeks now that the weather's breaking and finishing off that structure. This provides a, it's kind of one of the missing links in the northern half of the section. Once we get this finished off, then we can start connecting track through all the way back to the yard, and we can start thinking about train movements in this area. Walkley Station, they've made very good progress at this location over the last 6 to 9 months. It's coming together nicely. You see the roof structure there. I think the next big milestone for this location is going to be when you see the glazing go in place. Infrastructure Services is also doing work on the roadway, and so we're going to connect in the plaza of the station to the roadway. But a lot of good progress at this location. Again, the next big milestone will be to see the glass go in at this location. Walkley MSF. So just in the foreground, you see a new backup generator was installed. So that's a permanent generator connection. This facility is coming together nicely. They're really inside now, finished doing off the final electronics, the final building control systems, hoping to get, I don't know if they have permanent power on it just yet, but they're very close. If you go to the next slide, you get to see a shot of the interior. So some lifting jacks there under the plastic bags, but the facility is pretty close to being ready for occupancy. They ideally should achieve occupancy at this location over the next 2 to 3 months. So it'll be a big push for them on the interior. And then the next building, there's a couple here just in the foreground. So you've got the building that looks enclosed. That's actually a new car wash. So in the previous version of Trillium Line, we only had a manual car wash. So this is an automatic car wash. So they're finishing that off ahead of installing the automatic car wash system. And then just to the left, you see left bottom of the screen, you see the structural steel. So there's 2 full-length pits and 2 full-length inspection bays for refueling and resanding, taking care of the vehicles overnight. So we actually have 2 80-meter pits at this location, an 80-meter pit in the main building that you can use for light maintenance. And then we have an 80-meter pit and structure for heavy maintenance on the vehicles. So a lot of additional capacity with this new building. Greenboro Station. So this is one that's been kind of being worked on in the background. So you see it kind of coming together there. Middle of the screen, you see the emergency exit, second emergency egress point that's being added. And then obviously the existing pedestrian bridge was reworked by Infrastructure Services and OC Transpo to clean it up, to rebuild it, or rehabilitate it, to give it some extra life. But that platform's coming together nicely. So in good shape there. But again, a very simple platform at this location. The next slide, we'll see the South Keys. So you see the bus transitway in the foreground, and then the new South Keys station for the LRT system in the background. So that's coming together. And then just on the far left, you see a cinder block building, which will be an operator building. So the operations staff have easy access to the trains and swapping out shifts and different things from this location in the future. It's a rail installation. They have the test track that they've been using between Hunt Club and Lycham, but they are progressing rail installation in many other parts of the system. In the south, they have basically unfettered access to everywhere now. All the utilities have been relocated. There's a pipeline that needed to be protected. There was a hydro line that needed to be lifted up. So all that work is done, and so they can really start. Now that the weather's broken too, there's no concerns about laying track or laying ballast and doing that type of work. So they are progressing quickly in the south on the guideway. There you go. So this is Lycham Station. So this is another location where they basically enclosed it in late winter to be able to work inside and be protected from the weather. I think that helps them do a few things, get the elevators installed early, get some of the electronics and roofing structure put together in very ideal conditions. And so there's a lot of work kind of going on inside that structure. What you see in the foreground of this picture is the 2 platforms. So there's going to be some pre-manufactured panels that get dropped in place, and then the set of 2 tracks that go right through the middle of this station. Then further to the south, Bowesville Station. So in the distance, you see the Earl Armstrong Bridge, and then just on the right-hand side, you see the new building coming together. So it's coming together nicely. Here's again between this station and Bowesville Bridge. They have some work to fill in. Once they fill that in, then this gap will be connected, and they hope to have that connected through here in the next few months. Go to the next one. Get a bit of a view of Limebank Station. So here again, they've enclosed the elevator banks to be able to kind of get in there early, protect it from the elements, but they are making good progress at this location. Just in the top left-hand corner, you see the final connection from the elevated guideway back to the at-grade track level. So they're filling that in now, and once they have that in place, then they'll be able to make the track connection from here all the way through to Bowesville Station. Airport link, you see the the green fiberboard that's concrete board that's put up on the roof line there. So they're putting that together nicely. I believe the elevator mechanics are in place now. They're underneath working on the rooms, putting in the comms equipment. Again, trying to have it protected to be able to work as much as possible and keep it protected from the weather. And if you go to the next slide, it shows the airport station. So this is actually a primary shot of the plaza that's been built by the airport. And so their building is largely complete. They're in the final throes of testing the fire alarm panels and those types of things. So that structure looks very good. We'll now move into that area shortly to install comms equipment, to install fare gates and other things. And then just to the right-hand side where again, you see that green board, that's where the actual train will arrive. And that's where the train departures, alights and departures will take place. So just in terms of the work that's upcoming, Rideau River pedestrian bridge is going in later this summer. Station and bridge construction will be effectively complete this year. They're targeting end of year to finish all the construction on the project to allow them to basically get a start on testing and commissioning in January, February. Track and rail systems will go through this year. They're expecting to start testing of the Siemens signal system starting next month. So that's coming very soon. And then the Stadler deliveries, the next, there's 3 vehicles that still need to be delivered. And those will all be delivered in May. So we have 3 separate dates for when they would arrive on site in May. And they're planned to be fully tested by end of August. And so, very good news that we're starting the Siemens testing this summer. Very good news that we'll have the vehicle all delivered and ready well in advance of when they plan to open. So that's tracking very well. Right now, they are on paper. They're showing roughly a 12-month delay, which is more than their spring 2023 delay. But we are working with them to see what they can do to bring that back. There is some opportunity if they achieve their objective of finishing construction this year effectively of say 98% of the system, then that allows us to focus on testing commissioning next year. And then we can, depending on the performance of the system and the reliability of the system, we'll be able to at that point assess what's a realistic opening date for the system. In terms of impacts, so we've had a whole series of impacts here on the multi-use pathways that run along the Trillium line. There's a few that are well known. I think the biggest one that we're working with them on now is near that Rideau River Bridge and Vincent Massey Park, just because they have had some challenges there. So that's one that we're keeping a close eye on. And then you see a series of other ones here: the Muppet Walkley Road, Muppet Brookfield, Hunt Club Road shouldn't be too bad. I think that there's still some remaining works to be done there, but I don't think there'll be the same impacts we had last year. And then there's realignment of Earl Armstrong Road, Bowesville Road, which needs to be done. And then depending on utility connections into Gladstone, into Dow's Lake Station, a few others may have some impacts over the coming months that we need to watch closely. I mentioned the Stadler vehicles. So we have 4 of them already. We have 3 more to be delivered next month, and they are planning to commission all of those by end of August. So that'll be very good progress for the project. We'll have the vehicles kind of on site, commissioned and ready to go for testing and commissioning well ahead of when that activity will start, which would be very good news for the overall project. So if you go to the next slide, there's a quick little video I think we have here. It's about 30 seconds if you bear with us. I don't know if we'll get the sound from it, but it's the usual beats that are provided by our provider. So that's the summary of my presentation, Mr. Mayor. Again, a quick video of the Stadler vehicles. We're very happy with those vehicles. The ones that have been delivered so far have worked great. I think the staff who've been operating them have been very happy with them. And so we're very pleased with the progress that's been made on that front.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Michael. I think these updates are a reminder to us, and I think those who are watching, how big a project this is and how complex it is, building a rail system in built up areas. And it's really quite exciting when you see the testing of the trains in the south end already taking place. So thank you very much for that. Just one question from my perspective on the escalators. I noticed, you know, in stage one, they run all the time. When there are no customers there, you know, it seems to be a bit of a energy hog. If we looked at the possibility of those escalators that only operate when you go, you know, there's I think a light that you pass over on the front step and then it starts it up.
Yeah, that issue was flagged early on in the project, and we have requested that change be made so that the escalators during the quiet times, they would essentially, they go to I don't know if they go to a full stop, but they go to a slow or low power mode, and to help reduce power consumption. So that change has been directed to the Confederation Line team.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I thought Caroline Meehan had her hand up first, but thank you very much.
I'm not a member of the committee though, so go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, no, sorry, that was my mistake.
Yeah, neither am I. I guess I just got a promotion. Thank you. I appreciate this. It's great to see the overview. And I appreciate Michael and his team give me weekly updates on what's happening in Bayward, where it's basically 7 stations when you include Sherbourne, which will shortly be part of Bayward. So a lot going on. And you talked about the delay of 101 days that has been confirmed. It's a concern in terms of, will there be rushing? Because one of the issues we've had in terms of the residents is overnight work and those pushes to make up time, which greatly affects the community. Unlike the East End, which goes down the middle of a highway, this is in people's backyards, and this is very, very noisy and very close to them. We're working very closely with communities, obviously, but I just want to know if there'll be pushes on for overnight work with these delays.
So I think the primary work that's underway now is in relation to building the cut and cover tunnel. And so there will be some rock excavation work that is perhaps new to people, will happen in new areas as they've been kind of moving throughout the alignment. But ultimately, I think there'll be an opportunity for them to cover up. Once they put the top on the tunnel, then they'll be working kind of inside the tunnel, and that will kind of reduce the impact on the community. So I don't think the rushing is necessarily going to create a new volume of overnight works that will be more impactful than otherwise planned. But I think there will be some, you know, when they go to cover up the tunnel, when they go to work underneath, that'll provide some relief to the community when they actually can be inside something as opposed to kind of on somebody's front lawn excavating the rock.
What is the overall substantial handover date now?
So, you know, in their reports, they're showing 101 days delay to the original date for the west handover. But we are working with them. They have flagged publicly that there are some challenges with resources, craft resources in particular, laborers, carpenters, form workers, in terms of building that tunnel. They're doing a review now, and they've indicated that they will give us an update in July on where they are. You know, some of it has to do with their production levels that they can achieve over the course of the summer, and you know, if they're able to secure additional resources, that type of thing. So we are relying on them to contain it as much as possible, but the next major update on the schedule will be in July.
So part of this is labor shortages, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a substantial and shortage of material, like due to pandemic, is that also a factor?
You know, I think just in general in the market right now, there's a lot of pressure on supply of rebar, a lot of pressure on supply of concrete, and you need a lot of both of those things for the tunnel construction. So that's, the source of that pressure is, you can look at the hot construction market and point to that. Whether that's linked back to COVID, I can't say for sure.
Okay. One of the big issues is how to get to the stations. I appreciate there's going to be a number of pedestrian bridges. There's one, there's a couple we're getting, but also the pathways. And in our case, it's working with the NCC. Is it possible to get public updates on those connectivity moving forward? Because I think people want to hear more about that. We've got a secondary plan with Lincoln Fields, for example, and they've done a connectivity study in that area, which is one of the primary issues. Is it possible to get updates on that through stage 2, working with the city on the pathway systems?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity. We could provide a joint update on that secondary plan and the stage 2 plans for connectivity, and see kind of to be able to identify what's future and what's planned as part of our project. That should be possible.
Okay, thank you. And I'll pass it on to my colleagues, and I might have some more questions later. Thank you.
Councillor Meehan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question to Mr. Morgan. Would you just remind me how we're powering the switch hitters on the switch heaters on the Trillium line, please?
Switch heaters on both systems for the stage 2 extensions are all going to be gas. On the Trillium line, because some of the areas are quite remote, there'll be a mix of natural gas and propane gas.
Okay, that's good to hear. And are we still looking though at service delivery at next August, right through to Limebank?
When we open, the current plan on the Trillium line is when we will open all elements of it. So at one point there was discussion about whether you could do a partial opening, but the way the program is laid out, when we open, it will go all the way through to Limebank, and it will go all the way through to the airport.
So the date again is?
On paper, they're showing a year delay. So they're showing August 2023 for handover, but we are working with them to see if that can be advanced and brought back into early summer or back to spring, which is kind of the last date that we reported at FEDCO.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meehan. Councillor Leeper, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for the update, Michael. We have obviously already let the community know that the bus detour would be about 3 months delayed, and the delay that they're talking about is in line with that. I just want to confirm, though, the delay that they're currently talking about on the Western line is not a further delay on top of the delay in starting the bus detour. That bus detour is part of that 100-day delay.
So the bus detour was moved from this most recent service change to the end of June service change, and so that's rough. I think it was roughly 10 weeks, and so that's kind of a discrete element. The major factor driving the overall delays in the west is really the work on the tunnel.
Okay. So is there a risk that bus detour will be delayed again?
There's always a risk, Councillor, but I mean, at this point, we were surprised that it was delayed from the April service change, and we would be very disappointed if it moved again.
Okay. The date is coming up fairly quick in terms of finishing off all the works that are going to need to be done to ensure safe pedestrian and cycling passage around the bus detour. I think I just want to make a comment here that we haven't been pleased with the maintenance of safe pedestrian and cycling connectivity through the Scott Street corridor to this point. It will be absolutely critical that all that infrastructure be finished before the detour begins. We were anticipating an end to the Scott Street bus detour in 2025. Is that roughly still the same timeline?
Well, I mean, Scott Street detour is tied to the opening of the train system. So to the extent that the launch of the train system is delayed, that detour would be extended.
I just don't know if that 100 days, I don't know when in 2025 we were expecting to open it.
So the originally it was May 2025. And so we would be applying, that delay to that May date.
So still in May, or still in 2025 then. Okay, we'll obviously keep an eye on it. I am worried, as is Councillor Kavanagh, about rushing to finish things. We have 2 stations that are in very close proximity to residents. And obviously I'm not going to be predisposed to providing noise exemptions for any station construction work through the corridor, since they are in such close proximity to residents through there. So let's hope they're able to make up some time. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
Thank you, Mayor.
Michael, the picture you showed at Algonquin, I was under the impression that the built-in tunnel under the skilled trades building was going to be used. Is it not being used?
It is, Mr. Mayor, it is being used. And so that structure that you see there is for elevator banks to get you down to the level below the at-grade level. So there's 2 sets of elevator banks in those 2 buildings, and there are escalators at the location as well. So that's the structure you see that's being built.
Yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. Thanks. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and appreciate the presentation by staff. On the north-south delay, is there an updated timeline on the delay of the north-south, or what's the latest that's available?
Mr. Mayor, as I said, on paper, the delay is showing to be roughly a year from the original launch date. So it would be into summer 2023, but we are working to see what can be done with the contractor to bring that back, to see if there's any opportunities to get back to the spring date, which we reported on previously, or to at least achieve an early summer date.
Okay, and then previously the mayor had raised it, I've raised it too, around Carleton University and the significant disruption there. I'm worried because the last couple of years we've had COVID, there hasn't been as many on-campus classes. And so students haven't been taking the normal transit there. But class is likely going to start up again in September. And there's a big demand for transit on that campus. I know we have the R2 running, but I'm just concerned about capacity and if any of that's been taken offline because of the last little while of lower ridership. We had also talked about whether the line could be launched in a shorter span. And I know there was going to be some work done there to get back on that and see if this was possible to launch it in a shorter span. So on those 2 questions in terms of capacity of R2 in preparation for September Carleton student return and the potential launch of a shorter segment, I'd love to hear more information. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, on the bus capacity, I think service planning originally planned that detour. They would have allocated a number of buses to provide service to Carleton. I would have to defer to them on how much of that was reallocated during COVID and how much is available to be brought back in September if schools come back into play. On the segmentation of the opening, that's an idea that's been floated previously. The way that the program is unrolled in terms of Elwood grade separation still being incomplete, and some of the way that the signal program is planned to be tested, it would be difficult to do a partial opening without setting back at least part of the program a significant portion of time. So I think the fastest track to opening now is to just open it all at once.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Does anyone else have any other questions? Mr. Kanalakis or Ms. Amilcar, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, Mayor, I don't, unless Renee does.
Renee, est-ce qu'il y a des choses? No.
Nothing for me as well, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much to colleagues for this special meeting on a Friday, and thank you as well to our staff who put together a really solid presentation that gives us an idea of what to expect in the months and years ahead. So, Councillor Dudas, motion to adjourn. Carried. Adopté. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Have a nice weekend, everyone. A safe weekend. Merci. À la prochaine.
Thank you.